What do we know in the Western world about Islam? What do we know about the religion and culture of a quarter of the world's population? Amidst all the news related to extremist terrorism, you may have heard about Sunnis and Shiites Muslims. For many Islam followers, the only thing that defines them is the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. But an ancient division has survived 15 centuries to the present day. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with power. Let's discover the origins of Islam and of this ancient rivalry to understand better the religion and political struggle of 1 in 4 people in the world. Welcome to Intrigued Mind, and join us today as we look back at the history of Sunni versus Shiite. Islam has a crucial closeness with Judaism and Christianity, the 3 great monotheistic religions that we often overlook. These 3 religions define themselves as Abrahamic, which means they recognize Abraham as a prophet. And this is much more relevant than simply having a familiar character in holy writings. Muslims believe that Islam is the ultimate version of a primordial faith revealed earlier through the prophets Adam, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, through the Torah or the Pentateuch of the Christians, the Psalms, and the Gospel. Sounds familiar? How about this? Islam believes there will be a final judgment in which the righteous will be rewarded with paradise while the unrighteous will be punished in hell. Islam teaches that God is merciful, almighty, and unique, and has guided humankind through prophets and revealed scriptures. The main scriptures of Islam are the Qur'an, which is believed to be the textual word of God, as well as the normative teachings and examples called the Sunnah of Muhammad. The word Islam is the verbal noun originating from the Arabic triliteral root SLM, which forms a large class of terms mostly relating to concepts of wholeness, submission, sincerity, safeness, and peace, the consequences of accepting Allah in your life. The story of Islam started in the 7th century, a turning point in history. In Europe, the Germanic tribes that had overrun the Roman Empire struggled for supremacy as they shaped their feudal kingdoms. In the East, the once great empires of Byzantium and Persia were weakened by years of destructive wars. Soon, the tribes of Arabia will start a revolution inspired by Muhammad's revelation. Between the years 610 and 632, Muhammad became to the eyes of his disciples the first Muslims, the seal of the prophets, sent by God to the rest of humankind. In Mecca, Muhammad reported receiving revelations that he believed to be from God through the archangel Gabriel while meditating in a cave. Muhammad's companions memorized and wrote down the contents of these revelations, now known as the Qur'an. The leading Meccan authorities persecuted Muhammad and his followers. The Meccan aristocrats felt that Muhammad was destabilizing their social order by preaching about one God and racial equality for the poor and the slaves. After 12 years of persecution, Muhammad and the Muslims performed the Hijrah, or the immigration to the city of Yathrib, now called Medina. There, Muhammad established his political and religious authority, willing to institute several rights and responsibilities for the Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and pagan peoples, and trying to bring them within one community, the Ummah. Sunni and Shia came from what happened soon after Prophet Muhammad died in 632, because, as you see, he was not only a religious preacher, but also a strong political figure as the founding father of the first Islamic nation. The question was obvious: who was going to succeed him as the leader of the Muslim community? Prophet Muhammad died without a male heir, and he never said clearly who he would want as his successor. With all the tribes of Arabia gathered into a kind of confederation, that became the Islamic nation, the process of choosing new leadership was crucial. Of course, a disagreement broke out. Abu Bakr, a companion and close friend of the Prophet Muhammad, was made the first Caliph on the merit of basis, and here is where Sunni Islam was born. Abu was followed by another three known in Sunni Islam as the rightly guided Caliphs: Umar, Uthman, and Ali. A smaller group of the first Muslims had a different insight into the situation. They thought that the Caliph had to be hereditary, so Prophet Muhammad's cousin and brother-in-law, Ali bin Abi Talib, should be the chosen one. This group became known as Ali's followers, or in Arabic, the Shi'at Ali, or simply Shia. Eventually, Ali was elected as the fourth Caliph, but not before a violent conflict erupted that ended with the first two Caliphs being killed. War broke out when Ali became the fourth Caliph, and he also died in the fighting in 661. The war continued with Ali's son, Hussein, leading the Shiites, who faced the Caliph's great army on the battlefield. He and 72 family members and comrades fought and were massacred. Hussein was beheaded, and his head was carried in homage to the Sunni Caliph. Hussein's death became a spiritual symbol for the Shiites. The story of an innocent man being martyred by a much more powerful force was the crystallizing event around which the Shia branch of Islam took shape. In the 10th century, the 12th Shiite Imam would have to go into hiding, and the Shiites believed that it was God who drove him underground, so he became known as the Mahdi. Like the Jews or the Christians, the Shiites seek the coming of the Messiah. Under the Caliph's leadership, the territory under Muslim rule expanded deeply into the Persian and Byzantine territories. Islam spread to cover a huge swath of area and, in the present day, represents one of the religions with the most significant number of followers. Sunni and Shia Islam survived to become the main forms of Islam, overcoming divisions and threats such as the Crusaders and the Mongols. Approximately 85 out of 100 Muslims follow the Sunni side in several Arabic countries, from Morocco to Indonesia, while Iran is the heart of the Shiite world. Was the schism between Sunni and Shiite really a source of violence and hatred among Muslims? It doesn't seem so. Many sources report a peaceful coexistence between people who simply developed two different sides of the same faith, as Orthodox and Roman Christians, for example. Nothing new under the sun. The conflicts resulting from colonization in the latter part of the 19th century were followed in the 20th century by World War I and II, and crowned by the Cold War, generating enormous political and border changes in Muslim countries. Conflicts began in the 16th century when the Safavid dynasty forcibly transformed Iran from a Sunni center into the Middle East's Shiite stronghold. It continued into the early 20th century after World War I, when the victorious Allies divided up the territory of the former Ottoman Empire, generating controversy among centuries-old religious and ethnic communities in the process. Finally, in 1979, the Islamic Revolution in Iran radicalized Shiite practice, replacing a pro-Western authoritarian monarchy with an anti-Western theocracy, clashing with conservative Sunnis in Saudi Arabia and other countries in the following decades. A secular Iran turned into a hard-line Shia theocracy. The currents of Islam that have shown open hostility to the West are a consequence of this power struggle. It has more to do with the results of the division of the Arabic world from the World Wars and the Cold War than Islam as a religion, and can be found in both Sunni and Shiite religions. The interests over the oil-rich Persian Gulf region makes the situation even more complicated. The divisions between Sunni and Shiite, touched by Western Cold War interests, fueled civil wars and terrorist violence in Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and elsewhere. Extremist armed groups were a natural consequence as a form of defense for small religious minorities in each of these places. They evolved as extremist ideological groups that displayed a regrettable hatred towards other forms of Islam and the Western world. On the other hand, Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shiite Iran are under permanent tension because of their influence in the Middle East, particularly in the oil-rich regions. The political and economic elites cynically exploit the differences between Sunni and Shiite for political gain. The era of Saddam Hussein leading Iraq speaks for itself. In a country where Shiite and Sunni majorities always coexisted without problems, the Sunni minority was suddenly promoted from the political leadership, and the Shia majority was persecuted. Also, a hostile relationship was maintained with both Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shiite Iran. When the US overthrew Saddam, a vacuum was created that, fueled by the internal hatreds generated in Saddam's brutal years, led the country into a total disaster. There is no real bad blood caused by historical religious differences in the Middle East, either internally or towards the West. What does exist is an intentional amplification of disputes by the political elites, focused on positioning themselves as representatives of all Muslims. The vast majority of the population simply follows a faith that defines their culture, that has a much deeper value than the existence or non-existence of martyrs, prophets, or the way used to choose the caliph after the death of Prophet Muhammad. That value is, in essence, unifying and peaceful, as are the people who hold these beliefs. Did you enjoy the video? We would love to see you giving us a like and subscribe to our Intrigued Mind channel. We are continually releasing new, fascinating content with the most exciting stories about the past, present, and future.